Hello, Happy New Year, Happy 2022. Welcome. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
We are so glad to be with you this fresh new year. I know we're a week into it. It's January 10th. Today is our first day back from our office closure between the holidays, which was awesome and too short and went by way too fast. And we could use a couple more weeks, but we're here and we're glad. We see all the activity, that firms are engaged in, and it's exciting. When we were talking about, where should we start here with the fresh year, we were talking about, we left December talking about kind of a recap of, what the top, HR priorities and your talent strategies and, what the focus has been. And we kind of alluded to, well, this is going to carry over into 2022. So we thought we would talk about that and say, what do we think the priorities are, maybe must-haves as you look at your 2022. That's going to be hard for me to say. Wow. 2022 priorities for HR. What does that look like? But before we get into that, we want to talk about kind of where are we today? And I know I came into my first day back on 6 coaching calls, and we still have, I would say, unprecedented times, circumstances we're dealing with. 2 of the 6 people I talked to actively have COVID right now. And I know we've gotten emails from some other of our other participants and who are supposed to be in workshops and things like that. So we know that that's happening. We know that, leaders are working to get, busy, get people ramped up as they look at, peak seasons coming up here, or projects they're trying to either kick off or wrap up. And so just lots of different priorities. And it can kind of feel like, what direction do I go? Where do I follow? And so we thought we should just take a moment and say, let's pause and, where are we today? And what is still going on in the midst of saying, what should our proactive strategies be? So Jen, what would you want to add to that kind of backdrop there?
Well, just we've said this for all of HR Huddle, maybe not in every single episode, but almost every single episode. We have to be 100% responsible. We have to be powerful. We have to be proactive. We have to be in action and owning our strategic view. We have to. We cannot be victim to a pandemic, a virus, victim to retirements, victim to resignations, victim to declining enrollment rates in accounting programs or graduate rates or even enrollments in college at all. There's so many weird and incredible things happening in the marketplace that are conspiring to make our roles in talent management and HR leadership really hard. And that's bad news, but it's also good news because your firms have never needed you more than they do right now. You have been called to this moment in I don't know, like a 9/11 kind of a way. You have to solve some unbelievable problems and be heroic right now, as opposed to victim. And we have to be careful inside firms, and this is to all leaders, not just HR leaders, that we're not trying to blame anyone. We could, I know, in HR, blame some of our leaders, our top leaders or our partners for not investing enough in HR, not greenlighting hires we wanted to make, not really committing to the programs we thought were important fast enough in the past, because HR wasn't a 911. It wasn't a super duper highest priority in recent years. The last 2 or 3, yes, it has been, but even that, firms have been slow to open their wallets and slow to really make it strategic and critical and really elevate it. And so we could blame. We could always, back up and say, you should have funded us better. And they could blame HR. You should have foreseen this and made us do it. And we could play that game. That isn't going to get us anywhere. So from a mindset perspective, number 1 priority is, exercise, eat right, sleep, recenter yourself, meditate, do all the things to be mentally well and physically well, because you are called to a Herculean job this year. And we can do it. There's all sorts of innovation. There are all sorts of cool strategies to be had to be the best at capturing experienced hire recruits, at being the best on campus, on being incredible and innovating workflows so that you can change the kind of people we're hiring and open your doors to more EAs and more operational and administrative resources. I mean, there's all sorts of things we could do to ease the talent burden. Innovating with programs for mental health and physical health. But boy, we have to be our best selves as leaders and really called to the positivity of it, as opposed to the, man, I'm dragging my knuckles. This is sad. Eeyore, it's another rough day, another resignation, another COVID infection. We could do that. That isn't going to get us anywhere.
I think that's so good. And our mindset is going to make the difference. And I've been, reflecting on 2022, January 1, and all that happens is the calendar changes, but we have this whole fresh new possibility, this whole new year ahead of us. And if we think about it like that, new day, new page, literally, new day on the calendar, what can we focus on and who are we going to be about it? And how are we going to progress it? And what can I do differently, personally? What can I do to better communicate? What can I do to better inspire people to change and make the decisions and invest where we need them to invest? I think that is so important, for us to say, how can we do a better job of that? And that positivity and that mindset, I think, is super important for us to do that. And there is upside. We're seeing good news. I was on a coaching call today, and it was with a newer partner, and we started last May, I think. And it's like almost, not quite, but almost 180 degrees who he was today compared to who he was 6 months. He has hope. He has seen investments from HR in the recruiting and continuous recruiting. He sees resources. He's able to do planning for the upcoming busy season. He's able to start investing in, the right referral resources and doing client acceptance. He's like, I've had no time to do this since I became a partner 2 years ago. And I was like, I don't know who this man is. I mean, it was so great. And it's because of the changes that HR started to make. They started to, go to new places to recruit, smaller universities, more focused. They started to work on their investment on their training programs. And he was just like, I can't believe what I have today compared to what I have 6 months ago. So now my job is to keep them, which I loved, because he was taking responsibility. So that's what's possible. We know it's possible. We know firms are making the investments. We know HR is making change, and it's paying off. And so I think that's important. And so maybe if I were to start with one area to focus on, it's continuous recruiting. We cannot let up on recruiting if we don't have dedicated resources on recruiting. That is one place we have to. I had somebody else today in a different coaching call say, I need to be able to invest in recruiting so we can plan for the turnover we're going to have, because we're going to have turnover, and for growth that we want to have. And most firms are experiencing growth and want to grow even more. Growth is on the agenda. It's a top, strategy. And so we have to, make sure that we are hiring people, both experienced hire and, on campus recruiting, do it differently, look at different places. But those that are focusing on that and they have dedicated resources, and we're always, a step ahead instead of reacting, fill the pipeline first, close the business first, then we'll find people. That old strategy does not work. So
hire ahead. Oh my gosh. Or even hire, roughly even, but don't hire behind. Don't chase hiring. And Tamara, I mean, that strategy doesn't work. And if you overhire, which I never see anyone do, but let's pretend, we can always selectively reduce.
Right.
Give yourself the freedom and the power to do that, and to say goodbye to C players. There's just no such thing as overhiring. You got to throw everything you have at it. The only other thing I would put on your hiring idea, if recruiting is a core strategy, and if you think about it for a second, if you say, well, in HR, we can really only move the needle materially on 3 things in 2022. Let's just say that. And Tamara just picked recruiting as one of them. Well, inside recruiting, we can only move the needle on 3 recruiting things. And she threw out about 20. in her, maybe 12, but a lot. And I have to throw a couple more onto the pile of possibilities, but you can't do them all. I know one of her 3 was dedicated resources to recruiting that do nothing else but recruit. That one has got to be one of your top 3 if you don't already have those dedicated resources. And if you do, depending on your firm size, you might need 2, might need 3, you might need another person. But anyway, differentiation. Why work for you? Why are you a destination workplace? Why would I come to you versus these other guys I work for? Especially on the experienced hire side, but when I'm looking on campus and I'm a graduate if an accounting graduate, especially, why would I come to your firm versus all these other firms or even public accounting firms? There's technology firms, finance firms, everybody wants me. Why would I come work there? So we need to get a really crisp sentence that says why you're special. And it can't be something like we're people focused. It needs to be like we have mastered completely remote and blended workforce, asynchronous workforce that allows you, the flexibility to work anytime, anywhere, something like that. Whatever your differentiation is. It may not be that. It may be something technical experts on certain things, or really big industry experts, or something special. And it can't be, by the way, we have a special culture unless you can articulate the specialness. Because everybody says they have a special culture. So anyway, differentiation. And then second, could we possibly raise starting salaries for new hires? If you do it and you don't try to look at Robert Half's guide and say, oh, here in Omaha, Nebraska, we could get away with $51,000. If you just would say $51,000 is not going to compete with a technology company in Omaha, Nebraska that wants to hire a CPA, and they do, because they're going to pay 62. Why can't we just get the numbers where they need to be? We have not paid enough for accounting grads for a long time across the country. I picked on my hometown, but across the country.
Right.
So, pay more for the accounting grads so we can capture them into the profession, please. Just crank up another 10 grand and we'll start landing them.
Right. And the competition we've talked about is wide. I mean, and wide in the kinds of companies that are recruiting accounting grads, and wide geographically. So we do have to pay attention to that.
Big time.
So I think recruiting is definitely one strategy, and you have to pick 3 things underneath that, where to focus. And by the way, that's one way to manage expectations and inspire others. This is where we're headed. So they're coming along. And then when they come up with all their ideas, what else they think HR should be doing, you can say, this is what we agreed we're going to do. Now, which one's coming off the table so we can focus on that? That is on us 100% to manage those expectations. Otherwise, we're going to play whack-a-mole and just react to everything that's coming our way. So that is why to narrow and say, this is what we're going to focus, talk to the leadership group about it, let the partners know about it, whatever the right appropriate communication channel is, let them know. I also liked the destination firm, not only for recruiting, but then I would say for our current talent. What are we doing?
Number 2, strategy number 2, right?
Yes. What are we going to do? What?
Retention.
Yep.
Engagement, motivation, existing talent. Number 2.
What are we going to do to create that feeling of I want to stay here and work? Because they are being recruited daily, 7 times a day, some kind of recruiting message they are receiving. It is a lot. And it's probably actually more than that. If you really look at all the signs, just when I drive by, it's like, maybe I should go work at Starbucks. Maybe I should go do that. So it's a ton of messages.
Free coffee forever. I'm in.
Exactly. So, yes, what are you doing to be that destination firm? And that's part of the culture. What are we doing culturally? What are we doing to have this hybrid work? Given the pandemic does not seem to be slowing, it just seems to be morphing. We have to pay attention to that. How do we really get good at working remotely, managing remotely, serving clients remotely, having that relatedness and that rapport? I know that's one of the objections we hear is it's hard to have that relatedness. We want to be team. So that doesn't mean in person is going away. It's not. We just need to be strategic and safe about it. and figure out what that looks like. But that's one place to look. What are we doing to create that stickiness? Like that partner that said to me, hey, now it's my job to keep them. I was like, thank God. That's exactly right. That's exactly what our partners and our managers, especially our managers, we need to be training managers on coaching and feedback and mentoring. What are we doing for career plans? How do I know how to progress here? What are my steps? What can I expect? Communication, being more transparent about that, our path to partner. I've probably listed a dozen things already under engagement. Jen, I'm sure you have a dozen
learning
more.
and development, stay interviews, compensation studies. So like if I were picking 3 things that most firms aren't doing, it's those 3 right there. Money's talking right now, ladies and gentlemen. Convergence coaching, we would hardly ever say, wow, comp is super important. We would tell you that not everybody values it the same way, but the marketplace is talking funny money. And it's hard for people to not have their heads turned. So a compensation study to know where you're vulnerable, to know where you're underpaying, to get those things solved, to get at or above market, especially with the key people, all the A players, got to make sure their comp is right.
And not just against accounting firms. I think it's important to look at technology firms. I think it's
100%.
important to look at consulting firms. We've been probably pretty narrow. If we've been doing compensation studies, it's been on accounting firms, and accounting firms maybe like size, like market. There is no like size, like market anymore. What are we paying? And then there's all these other entities that we need to be considering too.
Yeah. So, there are many things under employee engagement retention that could be part of our strategy, but we would encourage you to just pick 3, whatever those 3 are. And it could be, that your firm, hasn't resolved what we're doing with remote and blended work. And that's like an axe hanging over people's heads, wondering, are we going to be forced back to the office or that kind of thing? Maybe that's what you have to solve for retention. Maybe it's that we don't have the right coaches or shepherds, and we really need to train the shepherds and coach them and make sure we have the right shepherds shepherding the A players, which is sometimes missed. And the way to decide what your top 3 are, if I am the HR person and I'm going to stop and say, okay, if recruiting is one of my core strategies and I have to pick my top 3 tactics or sub strategies under recruiting or retention, I would do a SWOT analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the firm in that area of recruiting. And you might do one for experienced hire recruiting and for on-campus recruiting separately. We have a SWOT template. I'm sure Emily can somehow link it to this recording or post it up there with the recording, or put it in a link to it in the comments of the recording somewhere, somehow, or you can email us and we'd happily give you a SWOT analysis template. But that's one way to help you. And then the weaknesses or opportunities are all the listings of possibilities for your 3 things under that strategy. And the reason we want you to pick it and name them and write them down and build goals around them is because HR is like a fast food restaurant with orders being given to you by every single person in the firm. Employee relations orders, mental health issues, compliance, governmental things. Every partner has ideas and needs and wants. Departments need you. The senior strategy team wants you. All your HR team members need things and have ideas. So you could just be flat with just trying to manage the incoming requests. And if you try to action those things, you're never going to get that proactive, significant leap forward in strategy. So you have to narrow it and you have to be disciplined and say, these are our core 3 strategic areas. These are our top 3 priorities in each area. And you get buy-in, of course. You define them. You get your HR team, get key business leaders, service line leaders, other operational leaders to input and influence. Then you get managing partner or executive committee buy-in, and then you start protecting those and saying, I'd love to spawn off this cool community service project you're wanting to do, but that's not one of our 3 strategies under employee engagement and retention right now. And so we can't staff that this moment. Let's put it on the whiteboard for strategies after we get momentum in these areas. And you have to start to be disciplined. That's how you'll get things done. That's how you'll show results. And that's how you'll get trust and buy-in for your ideas from your leaders, because they'll see you actually moving the ball instead of being victim to all those requests. So, but I do a SWOT analysis to help me pick my top 3 sub-strategies or priorities under each of these.
And you might start with a high level HR or talent and then see what bubbles up too. And the only reason I'm thinking about that, or you could just do separate, you for sure have to do separate ones to pick your top 3 underneath that. But what I'm thinking, Jen, is there's also technology. What should we be doing in the area of technology? DE&I fits under HR. Communication sometimes fits under HR. There's other stuff that gets kind of lumped into this is HR. Where does it fit?
Yes.
And so you have to say, what are we doing in those areas? And it might be we're not doing anything to move those right now, and we should communicate that. We're going to maintain what we have. And that's an okay strategy, because we can't take on too much new stuff, or maybe we started some stuff last year and we're going to just kind of, continue to further it. But as you were describing that, it just made me think that there's other stuff that fits under, it gets almost dumped under HR. And
I was going to call the third bucket of our 3. So recruiting, retention.
Other.
Well, no, I was either going to call it culture, because culture affects both recruiting and retention, and it's the way it feels to work at this place. And it sometimes means that we have to address a big, ugly elephant in the room kind of mindsets, or even personalities that are hurting us. And so culture might be the number 3 big gorilla, or innovation on the talent side. And that's where DE&I think fits. That's where technology fits. Like, I would love to see HR directly involved in innovating workflows inside our service lines, helping to help them figure out how to hire different kinds of people into these roles. That the traditional model doesn't work. We have to think differently. How can we innovate? And that directly affects our talent function.
And not from the recruiting perspective, but from the innovation. How do we, create a new model that going forward, what does that look like? And what's HR's role in that?
Yeah. And then that model affects how we recruit or who we recruit. But we're never going to get those changes unless somebody from a people perspective pushes that into those service lines. And if your firm's big enough, you might have those kind of people inside the service lines. But in smaller firms, that's an HR person in there trying to help making that defining the roles and helping that make that happen. So anyway, I might call the third bucket innovation, but for you, it could be culture. You may really need to work on culture, defining it, holding people accountable to certain behaviors, getting a partner code of conduct in place, defining core values, identifying behaviors that do not work and starting to weed those out. So I don't know what those are, but top 3 priorities, top 3 sub priorities underneath those. We'd love to know what yours are. We'd love to help you. If you said, hey, Jen and Tamara, I was on an HR huddle. I heard this thing. I picked my top 3 priorities. Here's my top 3 strategies underneath each. Any resources, we would happily send you links and tools and templates, or refer you to people that we know are doing those things to help you get there faster.
Yes, for sure. And now's the time, if you're going to do SWOTs, get input before everybody gets way too, I can't do that right now. And then while they're, busy serving clients and doing the things that, the CPAs and partners and leaders do, you can start to make the plan, work on getting the approval, start executing on some of it. Some of it's going to be just do it. But then the rest of it, you can say, here's the plan for the remainder of the year, and really get your team into action, hire the resources you need to hire, et cetera. So time is of the essence here, on January 10th. So we look forward to a great year with you, and let us know if there's any topics you want us to address this year in 2022. We would be happy to do so. So you can message us, or you can email us. You can always chat to us in the comments here when you're on. But we would love to, take topics that you like too. So have a great, productive week. We will see you again next week, and take care.